What I'd like to do is now introduce Claudia Maffetoni. Is that the right spelling? And Claudia is actually talking to us from Bradford at the moment. Claudia is one of the Rotary Peace Scholars and is in the 2014-15 class 13. Is that correct? Class of 13, and is becoming a Peace Fellow. And we're going to welcome Claudia to tell us all about how she's getting on, a bit about how she managed to become a Peace Fellow, and a little bit about her and what she wants to do. So I first met Claudia at a peace conference in Norwich, and she was talking to a group of young people from schools, and very captivating. So Claudia, I'd like to invite you to share with us your journey.
Thank you very much, Martin. And I'd just like to see a thumbs up if everybody can hear me well. I hope you can. Great, thank you. Okay, so yeah, I'm right now at the University of Bradford in the library. So I apologize in advance if there is any background noise. I tried to find a very quiet corner in the library, so hopefully it's going to be fine. And I want to thank Martin for inviting me, and David and Martin for helping me figure out the Zoom and all the tech needed for this. It's great. I've never been or participated in any activity of an e-club, so it's quite interesting to see how this works, and I find it fascinating that so many people from around the world can actually be a part of this, and that this meeting is recorded, and and all of that. So it's really great, and it always it surprises me how technology can really change the way we do things. Anyways, let's get to my own story. So I'm, as Martin said, a current Rotary Peace Fellow at the University of Bradford here in the UK. I've been here for now a little more than a year. I'm an MA conflict resolution student, and I'm at the moment finishing up my dissertation. And after that, I'm going to be heading back home. Home is Italy. I'm Italian, and so I'm going to be there for Christmas. And after Christmas, we'll see what happens. But I can say that this year at Bradford has been absolutely amazing, an amazing experience under a number of in a number of ways. So first of all, the possibility to learn so much about a field that I'm really passionate about. I am a mediator. I lived in the US for 6 years, and I was doing mediation there, but at the same time, I was also working for an organization doing online intercultural dialogue. So we worked a lot with technology and with online platforms to allow students from the US, Europe, and the Middle East to come together at different times and have constructive conversations about a variety of issues. So this is, part of also why I'm so interested in ways of that technology can offer us to bring people together on different time zones in different parts of the world to have meaningful meetings and conversations. And so, so I lived in New York, and sort of my journey as a mediator, as a conflict resolution practitioner, started there. Although I'd like to think that really this path has been paved a long time ago. So I grew up in an international school in Italy, and just living and growing up with a number of students coming from different countries really changed my view of the world and of what is possible and of why we should stick together and really support each other. And so, it came to me as a shock, as an early realization, but also as a shock that people from similar backgrounds to the ones I was surrounded by were fighting because of their differences. And so, this is what sort of got me started and interested in the field of international relations and conflict resolution. So yeah, so, you know, I graduated in international relations and diplomacy. After that, I got an internship at the United Nations in New York. And that's how my US journey started. And I ended up staying there and working, as I said before, with this organization doing intercultural dialogue, but also on the side, cultivating my interests in conflict resolution. So I took part to a number of trainings. I mediated around 60 cases in a couple of years. And eventually I came across the Peace Fellowship program. You know, a number of Rotarians encouraged me to apply, thought that I would have the sort of the right background to aspire to this fellowship. And that's why I give it a try. And, you know, fast forward, I arrived here last August 2014, you know, started this great journey here. So, you know, aside from lectures that have, I think, given me a lot of background and a lot of knowledge of current and past issues related to conflict and theories and, you know, what works and what doesn't in which contexts, one of the major sort of highlights of this year was just to be surrounded by and be with Peace Fellows and non-Peace Fellows, a number of students really from all parts of the world that have gone through and lived through a number of experiences related to conflict. Either they were working in development countries and conflict zones, or they were from, or they are originally from countries who unfortunately have experienced conflict. This is the case, for instance, of other two Peace Fellows, one from Congo and one from South Sudan, who have then eventually moved as refugees to the US and have been selected to be Rotary Peace Fellows this year. And so, you know, listening to their stories and relating the things that we have learned, we have sort of studied in class to real life situations, to real contexts in which, you know, policies were implemented and sometimes they work and sometimes they didn't. And it really allowed all of us to get an understanding and a better sense of what to do and how to do it, and why something works and some things work and some don't, and why it's important in whatever intervention, whatever action we take in the field, on the ground, to really always connect to the people that will be most directly affected by our actions. And so this has been a huge learning opportunity for all of us, especially for those of us who haven't necessarily been yet to conflict zones and developing countries, to really get a sense of what is the type of work, what is the type of attitude even that we should have. So that's been incredible. After that, well, this summer, another sort of incredible part of this program has been to have the opportunity to spend a couple of months in a country that we're interested in, to learn more about the culture and the surroundings, and hopefully integrate the learning by being immersed in a different culture, in a different context, into our dissertation, into our learning and writing. So I decided to go to Morocco. I left Bradford at the end of second semester, and I went to Rabat, capital of Morocco, in mid-May, and left at the end of July. And I interned with an organization called Search for Common Ground, Search for Common Ground office of Rabat. Search for Common Ground is a big international NGO with offices in 42 countries, and doing a number of projects in the field to really support conflict resolution projects and programs, and change attitudes from more confrontational ones to more collaborative ones. And so I went to Morocco, and I divided my time between office work and my own research interests and research time at the library and traveling. And my personal research interest was around conflict resolution principles and practices in a Muslim country and in an Islamic context. And so, specifically, Search for Common Ground has implemented a number of projects in different communities that sort of want to bridge and want to put together sort of principles and practices of conflict resolution as they're intended, broadly intended in the West intended as Europe and the US, and principles of peace and conflict resolution in Islam. And so I, had the privilege to sort of look into their projects, look into lessons learned, do, as I said, my own research. And now I'm trying to put all of this together into an organized work and writing and into my dissertation. And so this was, again, a great experience. I also traveled a lot within Morocco. I could experience the diversity within the same country, as it always happens, similar to the UK or to Italy or to any other country. When you move cities, when you move contexts, the culture changes, the way people live and think of things, even if slightly, it still changes. I have to say the best experience was definitely going to the Sahara Desert, down south on the border with Algeria. I took a weekend trip there with a group of Moroccans. So I was the only non-Moroccan in this tourist group, which was a very interesting experience per se. And I spent the weekend, as I said, in small towns on the border of the desert and then in the desert itself. And, I had the opportunity to really see and understand what it means to be for other non-Arab individuals in Morocco. So basically, we think, and it is actually a fact, that Morocco is 99% Arab and Muslim. However, the indigenous people of Morocco are not Arabs. So Arabs actually arrived there around the 700 after Christ. And before that, even at the time of the Romans and before the Romans, the indigenous people of Morocco were the Amazigh, so the Berbers, basically. And these people have sort of a very resilient culture of their own that has been overcome by the Arabs. So they actually tend to think, whereas the common narrative in Morocco is one of, a colonized country by France and Spain, for the Amazigh, the narrative is quite different. For them, the Arabs are the conquerors and the colonizers. And the colonizers and conquerors that never really left. So they're so the Amazigh and their culture have been pushed to the side, and it's just a very recent thing that even their alphabet, which looks nothing like Arabic, has been actually recognized, and their language has been recognized, because this was perceived for the longest time as a very threatening reality and identity within Morocco. And this also had to do with the fact that while Morocco was trying to find its unity and narrative as an independent country, even independent from the colonizing powers, all these other tensions within the same country were sort of pushed aside. So they were seen as an ulterior threat to the struggle that Morocco itself was going through in creating its own reality, its own national reality. And so simply by traveling, simply by communicating, and having these exchanges with the Berbers in the desert, I was exposed to something completely different within a country that I thought I had at that point traveled enough and read enough about and known enough about, and so on. So I really enjoyed my time there. And after that, I went to Italy, spent some time with my family, and came back here in September to start my dissertation. And this has been my focus from when I've been back. As I said, for after the Rotary Peace Fellowship program, I'm not quite sure. I'm going to, in the meantime, go back to Italy. I have been applying for a couple of jobs in London and Brussels in the US. I'm pretty sort of flexible about my location at this point. So I will just be enjoying for the time being some relax at home, and then in the meantime applying for jobs and seeing where next steps take me. Generally speaking, what I would like to do is go into international mediation and sort of bring my experience with mediation at a community level and at a level of individuals to a more international context. And so I'm looking for jobs in this field within the UN, but also a number of international organizations working in the field of conflict resolution mediation. So I think I'll stop there for now. And if there's anything, any questions, but also anything else in particular that you would like to know, I'm happy to share. Thank you, Martin.
Okay. If anybody wants to, if you want to unmute yourself and ask a question, I'll mute myself while the telephone gets answered. Oh, it's got answered. David, over to you.
Claudia, I've got two questions. First, how do you find Bradford after New York? Because I've got limited experience of Bradford, and it's full of Yorkshiremen or Yorkshire people, who are great. They're very friendly, but there are also a lot of Muslims in Bradford, and I would think it was completely different to New York. How do you feel about living in Bradford?
Sorry. Yeah. Well, yes, it has been quite a change to move to Bradford from New York City, for sure. First of all, in terms of just sheer size of city, it's so funny that here in Bradford there's this. It's great actually. It's funny in terms of like sort of different, gives you a sense of different dimensions and different sort of sizes of cities, but there's this one free city bus that runs from outside the university goes in a circle around the town and comes back, and it has pretty much covered the whole city. In New York that would be absolutely like impossible, although New York has an amazing subway system, but that's on the side. So anyway, yes, it has been a change, but I also welcome things such as being able to live on campus, so super, super close to where lectures and library and all my life has sort of been for the past year. Thing that was impossible in New York. Like the closest I have ever lived to my working place was 30 minutes away by subway, which means like probably if I wanted to walk that same distance, it would have been at least an hour and a half. So and the difference has been a minute away from like lectures because I decided also to live on campus. So that's the other thing.
The other question I've got, Claudia, is I'm fascinated on this peace scholar. It appears to me to be quasi-politician, because the sort of organisations you're talking about Brussels, you're talking about the UN, you're talking about conflict resolution.
Sure.
How divorced or how separate is what you're doing to what politicians traditionally do?
Sure, and this field the field of conflict resolution is absolutely sort of there's a lot of politics going on in this field. No question. And politics is definitely something that interests me. At the same time, politicians, generally speaking, advocate for something. So they're pushing for something, they're publicizing something, they are working on a policy that they want to support, and so on and so forth. Whereas mediation, which is the field, the sort of branch of conflict resolution that I'm interested in, has more to do with bringing people together and being a neutral, so to speak. Because neutrality, the whole discussion around neutrality is a very long one, but suffice to say that nobody can be truly neutral. You can try to be impartial, but the bottom line is that as a mediator, you're not taking sides. You're not advocating for anything. You're simply trying to bring people together and to have a difficult conversation about something that they both care for. And many times the underlying, the interest is the same, but the way the way that people approach the issue can be quite different. And so the mediator is sort of trying to bring two sides together to have to have a clarification around why this is so important for A and B, and how does this common underlying interest, how can this interest be bridged to sort of suit the needs that they're both trying to express. So I'm sorry. I hope that was sufficiently descriptive. But the main difference I think is that politics is advocacy most of the time, and conflict resolution and mediation is about bringing two parties together and not necessarily advocating for something, but rather just supporting a mechanism or a process of conciliation.
That's an interesting point, actually, Claudia, because if you say about bringing two people together and then trying to actually mediate in that situation, how do you actually get the two people or the parties together that are in conflict in the first place? Because that's probably the most challenging bit, I would imagine. I don't know, maybe it's not. But,
sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Well, so there are different ways. I mean, mediation works at different levels. The community mediations that I have mediated basically happened in the context of either a court or an office adjunct to the court that to which these cases were mandated. So basically, they were either sent there by a judge, ordered to go to mediation by a judge, or in the majority of cases, it was a voluntary choice. So parties made aware that they could also not go through the court system, but actually use an alternative to the court system that would allow them to actually speak up for themselves. Okay. Then chose mediation. On the other hand, when you're talking about bigger international type mediation, and there are different reasons why parties would come together. They've reached a hurting stalemate. Casualties on both sides are too high for a conflict to continue only by force, or there is a big powerful actor, like for instance the US or Russia, coming in and saying enough is enough. You have to come together to a table and sort this out. So it's power dynamics definitely play a big role in mediation, especially when we're talking about international mediation. That's also another difference, because community mediation can be done in a more facilitative way, where the mediator is truly trying to be impartial, while at an international level, mostly mediators are not impartial. They have stakes into the process, and they really direct the process to a certain outcome. And so this is what we see mostly on the news, of what the US does, or what Russia does, or what all these other actors that are proxy to a certain conflict try to do with the conflict, because of their role and of their position. So yeah, I hope that was clear.
Yep, that's great. Thank you. David, are you about to speak, or do you want? Is there anyone else with a question? I'll come back to you, David, for a sec. Anyone else got a question?
Yeah, Martin.
Yeah, James. Yep. I'll come back to you, David.
Claudia, it's kind of leading on from David's question in relation to the pseudo-politics. And Rotary is meant to be a non-political organisation, and which I'm not sure I agree with, but anyway, where does Rotary fit in all this? Because all the conflict resolution, all the stuff that you're talking about there, where's the actual? I'm interested to know where the Rotary aspect sits in the whole thing of what you're doing.
Sure.
Or is it? Or let's be quite crass about this. Is it just purely being funded by Rotary?
So no. Okay. So let's take a step back. So Rotary basically the Rotary Foundation puts money into this Rotary Peace Fellowship program in order to allow young professionals in the field of conflict resolution that have sort of at least, I think it was a 3 years experience in this field, to get a master's degree program in the field of peace and conflict resolution. Now, the reason why Rotary does this is I think they want to support the idea of a more peaceful world, right? So empowering people that have an interest in this field and in investing their life and their professional career in the field of peace and conflict resolution to have one more sort of weapon, if you pass me the word, on their side, which is the one of being more highly prepared in terms of knowledge and education to face very complex conflict circumstances and situations. So I still, in that sense, and I think that Rotary wants to support education and peace and a peaceful world. And recently, there's been the visit of somebody from the Rotary Foundation that came here for the Rotary Peace Seminar that we do every year, that basically said that this program of the Rotary Peace Fellowship program is probably going to be one of the longest lasting contributions of Rotary to the world, set aside obviously the polio campaign and eradicating polio. And I think this is very important. You know, in the type of complex world we live in, politics aside, peace and conflict are surround us all the time. And this is, not just now, but I think it's been, from the beginning of mankind, there's been this issue with conflicts and peace and sort of the relationship within the same country, within communities, internationally, has moved all the time, has shifted on this continuum between absolute peace and absolute conflict. So I think that Rotary is really trying to tackle a huge issue and sort of providing the world, in a sense, with qualified and prepared individuals that are willing to make a difference in this sense.
So just as if it's okay,
Sure.
Martin, a supplementary. So I'm struggling a bit with that, I have to say, because if I suppose the question that I'm going to ask is, well, before I do, Rotary, despite other organisations, Roundtable, etc., Rotary did not come out and make any statement about what happened in Paris last weekend.
Sure.
It took a decision, whether that was rightly or wrongly from their part, but they did not condemn anything that happened in Paris. Now, if they're about peace, Roundtable came out and made a statement about it, as I understand. So the question I'm asking you is should Rotary be more in the changing world? Should they be more vocal in terms of condemning some of the things that are going on around the world? Because I think as an organisation that's claiming to be peace building and funding people like yourself to do peace conflict issues, but yet I find it extremely strange that the worldwide president or the UK president or any of the European governors or anything didn't come out and make any statement whatsoever against what happened last weekend in Paris.
Sure. I mean, I can obviously not speak for the foundation or Rotary as an organization about, in terms of leadership, about why they decided not to do this or not to issue a statement.
Should they have?
Sure. And I mean, personally, I think that this is a very difficult question to answer because when things like this, like Paris, happen, then the broader issue becomes, if we do issue a statement saying that we, condemn the attacks, that we take a specific position in terms of what has happened, what are the implications of that statement? And I don't know that Rotary wants to sort of come across as taking one side or the other. I know that this is a very complicated thing, right? Like, the thing is, we can all agree that I think that what happened in Paris was the most despicable act of violence that we have seen in recent times, because unfortunately these events are multiplying, but that we have seen in recent times in Europe. However, there are, if one goes beyond the moment and the act in the moment, and I'm talking about right now, I'm talking as myself, right?
Mm-hmm.
There are so many other aspects around why this is happening, and culturally speaking, historically speaking, from an issue, from from a cultural perspective, as a social perspective, and so on and so forth, that, anything you say then is sort of becomes a sort of a shallow statement that cannot possibly address any of the other connected issues to the action that we all see. So, I mean, it's even difficult for analysts to really tackle the whole array of reasons why something like this is happening, let alone for an organization that is not necessarily an organization that does international political analysis, to go to address something like that with holistically, as it should, I think. Because I think that in these moments, like, so many statements are thrown out there, so many judgments are thrown out there, so many final and conclusive arguments are made, when none of this is final and conclusive. Like, there are so many aspects of what's happening that it would take hours to address. So honestly, like, I don't think, as a Rotary Peace Fellow, I think I support the fact that Rotary doesn't necessarily take a position in terms of what has been going on. And I say so because I think that these are very complex issues that are too often reduced to statements, when actually the conversation should be opened and not closed. So I'll stop there.
Thanks, Claudia. I think I'm just conscious of the time. Is there anyone else who's got a particular question they'd like to ask? The last question, if there is. If not, then I'll call upon Jacqueline, if I may. Thank you, Claudia. I'd like to call on Jacqueline to just give a vote of thanks.
Claudia, thank you very much for coming along tonight. I hope it wasn't too painful. I thoroughly enjoyed listening to you. And for me, one of the foundations of Rotary is promoting international understanding. And I really think the Peace Fellow and the scholars are part of that cornerstone. And you've been very interesting and also managed to field some fairly difficult questions. So I thank you wholeheartedly, and I'm sure they'll all show their thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Martin, David, Jacqueline, and all of you for having me tonight. I was very happy to have a chance to participate in this meeting, and hopefully it was interesting. And please don't hesitate to get in touch with me. Martin has my contact information. I'm happy to answer any other questions or just engage in conversation. And I wish you all the best. Unfortunately, I cannot stay longer. I need to go back to my dissertation writing. But once again, thank you so much to all of you, and it was a pleasure. Thanks.
And thank you, Claudia. And you're always welcome to join the meeting in your own right. Feel free to just use the same meeting number and pop along. A bit like Irene and Gerald, who have joined us from South Africa, who are in South Africa 1 E-Club. So that's another club that we were talking to last week. So
great.
Well, that's great, and that's what E-Rotary is all about. So good luck in your studies. Good luck in your studies, and talk to you soon. All right.